The call came just after dawn. Routine, quiet, almost dismissible. A neighbor complained of a sour odor drifting from the house at the end of Maple Crescent. Two patrol officers, expecting nothing more than a broken pipe or a dead animal, stepped into what looked like any other suburban home. The curtains were drawn, the air heavy with stale dust, but as they followed the scent into the living room, a strange detail froze them in place. The floorboards near the couch were slightly lifted, as if something beneath had pushed back. Moments later, one officer radioed for backup, his voice trembling. By the time Detective Laura Keene arrived, the air in the house was suffocating with decay, and something else, fear, whatever lay beneath those boards, wasn't supposed to be found. The boards came up one by one, and the smell thickened into something unmistakable. Detective Keene didn't flinch, though the young patrolman behind her turned away. What they uncovered wasn't a body, not yet. It was a series of heavy-duty plastic sheets, layered, sealed with duct tape, arranged too neatly to be random. Keene's voice was calm when she called for the forensic team, but inside she felt that cold, crawling certainty. This was planned. Every fold, every layer spoke of control. Dana Ruiz knelt beside the opening, cutting through the tape with sterile precision. The first layer peeled back, revealing not flesh, but objects. Old Polaroids, a rusted key, and a single child's shoe. The room fell silent. Hale exhaled slowly, his voice barely audible. This isn't a burial site. It's a collection. Outside, the street was sealed off. Evelyn Brooks stood by her mailbox, wrapped in a cardigan too thin for the weather. She told the officers she'd lived across from Peter Lang for 15 years. He'd wave sometimes, never much more than that. She remembered his wife's funeral, quiet, barely attended years ago. After that, the blinds stayed shut. Her voice trembled when she added, "He always worked in that basement at night. Said he was fixing up the place." The camera lingered on her face as her eyes drifted toward the house, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I used to hear tapping, like tools, but it wasn't just tools. It was slower, like knocking." While forensics cataloged the evidence upstairs, Keene and Hale descended to the basement. The air grew colder with every step. The stairs creaked like brittle bones, and at the bottom, darkness absolute. Their flashlights cut through it, revealing walls lined with soundproof padding. Hale's beam caught a metal door at the far end, the kind built for storage or panic rooms. It was padlocked from the outside. The detectives exchanged a glance. No words needed. When the lock finally snapped open, the door released a gust of foul, trapped air, heavy with chemical rot. Inside, a single chair sat in the center of the room, surrounded by stacks of VHS tapes labeled only with dates. Keene whispered. He recorded everything. Dana Ruiz set up the playback equipment upstairs while the others cleared the room. The first tape clicked into the player, and the screen filled with static. Slowly, an image formed. A grainy view of the same basement, filmed from the corner. A man's voice spoke off camera, low and calm. Then a figure entered the frame. A woman, bound to the chair, head bowed, barely moving. The voice said something soft, indistinguishable, before the screen cut to black. No one in the room moved for several seconds. The silence that followed was heavier than any sound. Hale turned toward Keene, his voice raw. He filmed them right under his neighbor's feet. Keene's expression didn't change. Then we find out how long he's been doing. The morning after the discovery, the house felt emptier than before. Detectives Keene and Hale stood amid the tagged evidence. Photographs, the taped objects, the cataloged videos, each piece whispering fragments of a longer story. Back at the precinct, Keene spread the Polaroids across a whiteboard. Every image showed small, ordinary details of homes around the city. Mailboxes, garden gnomes, street signs. Nothing overtly criminal, yet everyone linked to an unsolved disappearance. The realization settled like lead in the room. Hale traced his finger across a map dotted with pins. He wasn't hiding a single act, he said quietly. He was building a record. Dana Ruiz's team processed every object from beneath the floor. Chemical residue hinted at a preservative, something meant to halt decay. Keene watched the technician's steady hands as she documented each find. A partial fingerprint emerged on the rusted key, enough to run through databases. Hours later, the result returned with a match. A case from 12 years earlier, dismissed for lack of evidence. The suspect's name, Peter Lang. Hale exhaled through his teeth. He was in the system the whole time. Keene stared at the printout, expression unreadable. Then he knew exactly how to stay invisible. Public records painted Peter Lang as ordinary, a maintenance contractor with no debts, no criminal convictions, and a spotless reputation among clients. But deeper searches told another story. 5 addresses over 20 years, all within a 30-mile radius of past disappearances. Each home sold quickly after renovations. Keene studied the timeline. He moved every time someone went missing, she said. Hale's voice was low. And each time he left, the floors brand new. They brought in former tenants from Lang's past properties. One man remembered odd noises from beneath his rental's floor. Another recalled finding sealed vents behind a wall. Their accounts overlapped in ways too precise to ignore. As each witness spoke, Keene's pen moved steadily, her focus unwavering. When the final witness described Lang's calm, distant smile, the room fell silent. Hale closed his notebook. He rehearsed normal. Late that night, Ruiz called from the lab. We found fibers, different house, same signature compound. The discovery tied the evidence beneath Lang's floor to a missing person case filed only months earlier. Keene stood by the window of her office, city lights reflecting in her eyes. He never stopped, she murmured. Hale joined her, the case file in hand. Then he's still out there. The camera lingered on their faces. The exhaustion, the fear, and beneath it, the quiet resolve that this investigation had only just begun. Contractors hired to stabilize Lang's property turned over a set of renovation plans dated 2 decades back. The prints showed a sub-level beneath the basement, an addition no permit ever mentioned. Keene traced the faint pencil lines with a gloved finger. He built a room beneath a room. Hale studied the measurements and sealed it before anyone inspected. A decision was made to excavate. As concrete dust filled the air, a hidden door emerged behind a wall panel, cold steel, untouched by time. When the steel door swung open, a dry gust rolled out, air that hadn't moved in years. The space beyond was small, lined with shelves of numbered boxes and tape reels. Ruiz methodically photographed every inch. He archived everything, she said quietly. The boxes were labeled not with names, but with codes, dates, coordinates, fragments of words. Hale ran a hand over one label. This isn't storage, he muttered. It's a ledger. Back at the precinct, technicians digitized the reels. The content, mostly ambient sounds, doors closing, footsteps, muffled radio static, offered only fragments, yet the timestamps aligned with missing person reports. Keene listened through headphones, eyes closed, piecing together patterns of silence and sound. He documented intervals, she said. Every absence has a beginning and an end. Hale leaned closer. Then somewhere in here is the moment he decided who disappears next. Ruiz's analysis found repetition hidden in the static, pulses spaced at perfect intervals. When plotted visually, they formed geographic coordinates. The pins on the city map matched locations where Lang had once lived. He left a trail inside the sound, Ruiz said. Keene stared at the pattern, realization dawning. He wanted to be found, but only by someone who understood the order he lived by. The final coordinate led to a wooded area outside town, a property once owned by Lang's company. As dawn broke, investigators assembled at the site. Keene stood by the tree line, wind tugging at her coat, the sound of generators and rustling branches merging into one restless rhythm. Hale approached, phone pressed to his ear. "Warrants in. We start digging at first light." Keening looked toward the dark soil ahead. "Then maybe," she said, "we'll see what he wanted us to find." Lang's life on paper was as ordinary as the rows of identical houses he maintained. Former clients remembered him as punctual, polite, forgettable. Hale watched archived service logs scroll down his screen. Hundreds of addresses, all within a narrow radius. "He built his cover on routine," he said. Keen nodded slowly. "A man who studies invisibility until he becomes it." Every record looked clean, except for the few missing invoices that coincided with vanished residents. That pattern, subtle and deliberate, was the first clear outline of the person they were chasing. Consulting analysts built a behavioral model from Lang's records. Each relocation, each renovation mirrored the same timeline. Arrival, adjustment, disappearance, departure. King traced the pattern on a digital map, the cycles overlapping like clockwork gears. "He lived by schedule, not impulse," she said. Ruiz added softly, "That's what makes it frightening. Predictable means repeatable." Hale folded his arms, the weight of the statement sinking in. "Then, if we understand the rhythm, we can anticipate the next move." Evelyn Brooks returned for a follow-up interview. This time, she brought a box of old photographs, the neighborhood over the years, birthday parties, block gatherings. In the background of nearly every picture, Lang appeared, trimming hedges, watering plants, blending into the scenery. "He was always just there," she said, voice thin. Keen studied the images, realizing how expertly presence could masquerade as invisibility. "People don't see what never changes," she murmured. Hale's notebook closed with a soft snap. He counted on that. A secondary search of Lang's storage unit uncovered personal notebooks. Meticulous, coded, filled with measurements and weather notations. Each entry cross-referenced with calendar dates matching earlier findings. Ruiz compared ink samples confirming authorship. Hale flipped through a page of precise handwriting. "No emotions, just logistics," he muttered. Keen closed the cover gently. He recorded control itself. The discovery reframed their investigation from pursuit of a suspect to a study of obsession. After weeks of analysis, the team compiled the final profile. A methodical planner who relied on structure to mask obsession. Every action, every gesture, designed to blend into ordinary life. The realization was chilling not for what it revealed about Lang, but for what it said about the world around him. That routine could hide almost anything. Hale broke the silence. "He's not a ghost," he said. "He's a pattern pretending to be a person." Keen looked up from the report. "Then we find the next pattern before it breathes." The coded notebooks from Lang's storage unit became the investigation center. Lines of symbols and numbers turned out to be coordinates, cross-referenced with service invoices and security footage timestamps. Ruiz projected the data on the wall. Clusters formed a network of addresses, unregistered sheds, abandoned lots, and storage units under shell companies. "He mapped his life like a circuit," she said. Keen studied the glowing grid. "And every line leads to a place we haven't searched." Hale's jaw tightened. "Then we start opening doors." The first 3 coordinates led to forgotten storage properties on the city's outskirts. Inside, investigators found sealed boxes containing paperwork, photographs, and construction blueprints, each tied to homes Lang had once repaired. It was less about concealment than preservation. "He kept records of everything he altered," Keen said. Yes, if cataloging control itself." Hale sifted through a pile of dated blueprints, his expression grim. "He treated the city like one long project." Among the documents lay a password-protected drive. Ruiz cracked the encryption after 2 days of sleepless analysis. Inside were hundreds of text files, meticulous logs describing dates, materials, and short observations. None mentioned people, but each entry aligned with dates of reported disappearances. He wrote in absence. Ruiz murmured. Keene felt a chill settle. He documented what wasn't there. Hale exhaled slowly. Then these errant confessions, they're memorials. News outlets caught wind of the investigation. Cameras crowded the precinct's steps, headlines screaming about the archive case. For Keene, it meant distraction. For Hale, exposure. Every headline gives him power, she muttered. Press lights flashed through the glass doors, reflecting in her eyes like lightning. The department issued only a brief statement. No comment on the evidence. No names released. Inside, the team worked under the echo of outside voices demanding answers they weren't ready to give. In the early hours of morning, Ruiz's final analysis revealed one address missing from the entire coded network. A gap that didn't fit his rigid logic. Keene stared at the blank square on the map. The place he never listed, she said. Hale leaned closer. The one that matters most. They shared a glance that carried exhaustion and certainty in equal measure. The order went out before dawn. The next step wouldn't be excavation or decoding. It would be confrontation. The final coordinate pointed to a weather-worn property on the city's industrial edge. Abandoned workshops surrounded it, their corrugated roofs glinting dull under a gray dawn. Hale parked the car without a word. Keene studied the silent building. He's been here, she said. Ruiz confirmed the signal from surveillance. Motion inside, faint but real. He never left his pattern, Keene whispered. He's been watching us finish the map. The door gave way with a muted click. Inside, the air was dry, untouched. Layers of dust covered workbenches lined with labeled boxes, identical to those from the archives. Keene's flashlight swept across a row of monitors, each displaying live feeds of familiar streets. He's been here the whole time, Hale murmured. The realization hit like cold air. The Watcher had never fled. He'd simply blended into the infrastructure he once maintained. He was sitting there when they turned the corner, quiet, motionless, waiting. Peter Lang didn't rise when the detectives entered. His voice, low and steady, filled the silence. You finally found the last address. Keene studied him. No fear, no anger, just the calm of someone who'd rehearsed this moment. Hale read him his rights with deliberate precision. Lang's only reaction was a faint nod, as if acknowledging the end of a long experiment. Hours later at the precinct, Lang spoke sparingly. Every answer was measured, every pause deliberate. You kept records, Keene said. Why? Lang smiled faintly. Because someone had to remember. Hale leaned forward. Remember what? The silence stretched until the hum of the fluorescent light seemed to pulse with it. Lang's gaze drifted toward the mirrored glass. Everything that disappears leaves a pattern, he said. You just had to see it. The statement ended with no confession, just a single line written in Lang's precise script. The pattern is complete. For the team, it was both closure and riddle. As dawn touched the city skyline, Keene watched fog drift over the river and felt the strange quiet that follows discovery. A calm too large to name. Hale joined her by the window. Do you think he's done? She shook her head slowly. Patterns don't end. We just stop following them. Weeks later, the official report landed on Keeney's desk. Thick, bound, conclusive. The files listed evidence, statements, timestamps, but no clear motive. The case was technically closed. The answers felt partial. Hale scanned the final page, then looked up. Everything's there, he said. Keene shook her head. Everything we can prove. The silence of ordinary life returned, heavier for what it concealed. Maple Crescent looked unchanged. Trimmed lawns, fresh paint, the scent of lilac in the air. Yet conversations paused whenever a patrol car rolled by. Evelyn Brooks watered her garden as always, but never glanced at the house across the street. They fixed the floor, she said softly to the camera crew, but it still creaks. The words lingered, proof that memory leaves its own architecture, impossible to rebuild. In the evidence vault, boxes from the case sat sealed and numbered. Ruiz logged the final items, her notes precise, detached. She paused before closing one container and whispered, "Nothing ever really ends. It just gets filed." Rows of identical crates stretched behind her, an archive of human absence catalogued by date and case number. The hum of refrigeration units replaced the voices that once filled the investigation. Months later, a documentary crew interviewed Keene and Hale. The reporter asked what stayed with them most. Hale answered first. "How easy it is to overlook what fits in," Keene added. "You expect danger to stand out, but it hides best when it looks familiar." The camera lingered on her face, a mixture of fatigue and composure that belonged to someone who'd learned that truth and peace rarely share the same address. The film closes on nightfall over the city, windows glowing, streets alive with motion, every home its own small mystery. Keene's final narration drifts over the images. Every street holds its secrets. Most fade when the lights come on. Some stay beneath the floor, waiting for someone to listen. The screen fades to black. Then, the faint echo of a ticking clock. Not menace, just memory.